be? This is Honda Boy Floyd, and welcome back to my freaking nightmare. Uh, I'm not having fun. I, I can't lie. I'm not having fun. As a colorblind person, trying to figure out wiring is just awful. And since it's my fault that it's all took apart, it's my job to get it all back together. So, yeah. So I'm here beating my brains against the wall. No, I'm just using what I have in house, so I'm pretty limited for wiring and connectors, and a lot of these are new style connectors, and they look like trash on the bike, but it's a Frankenstein monster anyway, so who really gives a shit? This really needs to be done though, because if you look closely at these wires, there's a lot of splits in them. A lot of places where the old electric juice can. There's another little spot there. There's another one here. Bunch of spots where the electricity could leak out, so we don't want that. So some of these leaky wires could have contributed to the getting stuck on the side of the road problems I was having last year. It's also like 35 degrees out right now. Alright. Well, since this was my intended project for this week's video, and I'm hateful about it, maybe I'll just tell you the Honda Boy Floyd story instead. Man, it took a turn for the worse out here. This is awful. What are you gonna do though? You gotta love Michigan. So to start this story off, we're gonna have to go way back to the 1970s. Way back to when this pretty lady on her motorcycle met this complete madman who rode a motorcycle. And they had themselves a chubby-cheeked little grommet. That's me. Now, if I zoom out a little bit, you'll start to begin to see how I spent most of my childhood growing up. Now, before I came along, my mom was a hippie and an adventurer, and my dad was, just a two-wheeled maniac. And, well, here's a picture of his Suzuki, his first bike, and his Kawasaki 500 Triple, his second bike, in front of his Stingray. Now, he got into motocross pretty heavy in the early 70s, and he was actually pretty successful at it. He raced a lot of different motocross tracks and a lot of different trail time events. And if any haters want to mention that he's riding a Suzuki while wearing a Husqvarna jersey, here's a picture of my aunt's on his Mag 250 Husky. So you know where you can go. And here's another picture of one of his Pentons. So he had a lot of different bikes. So I had what many would consider to be a pretty interesting childhood. I mean, we rode around in an old orange van from motocross track to motocross track and going up north and doing trail rides all the time. And it seemed normal at the time. You know, like so many really cool things that you look back on just seem like living. Nowadays, it's a really special time that, I wish I could revisit again. But man, it was cool. And here's that old van. It was a 1977 Econoline with a 351 and a 300 tree. It's a pretty rowdy little hot rod of a van. I still have memories of riding around on this thing, going everywhere. It was such a cool ride. And it fit dirt bikes in it. It seemed like vans were always part of the dirt bike crowd back then. There's so many pictures where you can just see a old van in the background, a bunch of dirt bikes around it. These guys were pretty hardcore lunatics back in the day. Here's a picture of them from a February trail ride in sub-zero temperatures. They didn't give a damn. Another pretty cool story from when I was a little kid, less than 1 year old. Pretty much as soon as I was strong enough to, hold my head up and hold myself together. And there's pictures of this. I just can't find them. But my dad would put me in a baby backpack and ride around on his dirt bike, hitting jumps. I mean, there's a couple pictures of pretty big jumps with me in the backpack trying to stand up and just loving it. So, I don't know what you'd call that today. Probably neglect or abuse, but pretty cool part of my lore. Now back to dirt bike camp. This was probably 1982 when I'm sitting on my mom's lap enjoying a juice and just hanging out. The guy in the hat's Falco. The other lady's his wife, Joyce, and I'm not sure who the other guy is. This group called themselves the LFW PDT, or the Late Flying W Precision Drill Team, if any of y'all know what that means. And I still got fond memories of a lot of these guys. Randy, Falco, Joyce, Turpa, and this psychopath right here, Big Al. You wouldn't know it to look at him, but this guy actually started a computer company in the early days of computers, home computers, and sold it and became a millionaire. So good on him. But back to me, though. So motorcycles are just a way of life for me. Ever since I was born, we had multiple motorcycles in the garage and traveled around riding, and it was just what we did. And as far as I can remember, all I ever wanted was a motorcycle of my own. And I remember having dreams about it when I was a kid. They were always just the coolest things ever to me. Here's a picture of me on my dad's GPZ 550. Now, when I was probably 6, I got myself a Yamaha Zinger four-wheeler. It was pretty rad. I really enjoyed it. But I always wanted to be like my dad and wanted to have a dirt bike. So when I was 8, I think I stepped up to a XR80. It's the same one that I own today. And I just love this bike. It's so cool. And I can't believe that I've owned it for as long as I have, like 35 years. It's crazy. Now, I rode the XR for a number of years, and it was a great bike, especially with the little property we have here right in the middle of town. It's quiet, and it was a lot of fun. And but as one does, I kind of outgrew it. And by the time I was 15, I was ready to step up to a bigger bike. And my dad suggested that I step up and try out his old Husqvarna. This is a 81 430 XC, and it's a beast. Yes, it's the same one that I was sitting on in that old picture. Now, obviously, I can't remember a time without this bike being in our lives, but as a 130-pound 15-year-old, I did find it a little hard to start, especially with the kicker on the wrong side. Now, back in this time, I had some of the best friends a guy could ask for. I got a job at the local grocery store, and I met a bunch of guys from one school over. And they were all pretty cool. They were dirt bikers, and so we all just hit it off right away. And we would go riding together. It was a lot of fun. We all had, bikes that were 20, 25 years old at the time. So we were all pretty much, vintage from the start. But had some great friends back there. Guys like CJ and Billy and Freaky Pete, who was my best friend at the time. Real good guys. So I wish I hadn't lost touch with them. This damn thing, why is it doing this? Why can't I get this to rotate? I did it. I edited it in my phone, but it didn't. Anyway, by the time I'm 16, I got a job and I got a loan, and I bought myself a 1989 YZ250. Damon Bradshaw, baby. This bike was all right, but it never really seemed to run right. The previous owner was a bit of a yahoo, and I was 16 and didn't know a lot of what I was doing with bikes. But it ran well enough, and it was a lot of fun. But this is about the time we were introduced to the Holy Land, Silver Lake Sand Dunes. This is my favorite place to ride. It's just a huge area of big, giant playground for big kids. You can hit big air here and have just a great time. I love it. And yeah, look at this. This was taken on 35 millimeter with a Canon from the late 70s. Now, my friends and I, we just love the dunes. There was a few summers we went there almost every weekend and just had some crazy times. But one trip we were about to leave on, and my YZ250 wasn't running right, so I had ordered a new jet needle for it because I was trying to figure out carburetors and just poking around with things, didn't know anything about what I was doing. And the jet needle didn't come in time, so I was at the dealership and I was a little bummed, and I just kind of looked over and there was a brand new YZ400F sitting there. And I said, let's do a trade. Let's go. So I secured financing and got myself a really cool new bike. Seriously, why can't I get these to rotate? Anyway, here's my YZ400F, and man, this thing was a beast. This is the bike that changed the industry. This was truly the first competitive four-stroke motocross bike, and I think it's an amazing bike. I still own it, and once I get it back together, it shall be a beast again. So now we'll be moving into one of the best and unfortunately worst times of my life. I was in my early 20s and I had to find a place to stay. And so I moved in with a friend of a friend, and he lived in this little cottage right on a big lake. And it was amazing. I had a really good job. I had a UAW job. I got out of school. Never went to college, but I made twice as much as most all my friends back at that time. I played bass in a band. Um, I had a jet boat, a couple of jet skis, my dirt bike, a monster truck, a beater car. I was living large, man. But also, I was struggling with a lot of depression, anxiety. I hated my job. I didn't like most of the people I was around all the time. It was just rough. My roommate at the time, though, was a motocross rider as well, so that was pretty cool. He had a KX250, and one of his good friends had a plot of land, and another one of his good friends owned a landscaping company. So we got the landscaper with his bobcat over to the land, built a giant track. I mean, this was a nice motocross track, and man, we rode it all the time, like as much as possible. In fact, I remember right before I bought my monster truck, I had some issues with my vehicles, and I ended up owning a beat to shit Chrysler LeBaron convertible. And I remember wanting to go to the track, nobody else wants to go, and loading my 400 into that LeBaron convertible and rolling it to the track. I wish camera phones were a thing back then, but I mean, this was probably 2001, 2002, so I got no pictures, no nothing from it, which sucks, but because that was pretty cool. That was a fun time. Now, here's where the term Honda Boy Floyd comes in. Now, I didn't coin the term, but it was one we used a lot back in the day. Because, see, I rode Yamaha, and most of the guys that I rode with rode Kawasaki's. One guy had a Suzuki. But, like, Honda's always been the big house. Honda's always been, considered the big house. The big company. So we were always like underdogs and punk rockers. So see a guy on a Honda to be like, oh, look at that Honda Boy Floyd over there. Oh, look at that Honda Boy Floyd there. The pretty boys in their Hondas. Yeah. And then I grow up and out of the 8 bikes I own, 6 of them are Hondas. So I gotta grow up to be Honda Boy Floyd. During this period, we were constantly going to the dunes. It's about a 3-hour drive from us, and it seemed like almost every weekend we were up there. And the weekends we weren't, we were out on the boats and the jet skis. It really was a fun time in life. Man, used to hit some big air up there. Maybe I'll try again someday. Yeah, the biggest air I hit in my life was up there. Talking hitting sand dunes in 4th gear pinned and just flying. That was sweet. I never found a 5th gear jump, but 4th gear, you're hauling. You're hauling. Some good jumps. Now, as it happens so often with roommates, we had our little falling outs, and it became time to move out. So I moved out, and sadly, I lost a lot of my life in doing so. No longer in a band, no longer able to go to the motocross track, no longer had anybody to go to the dunes with. Became a rough time for me in motorcycles. But being a gearhead, I did what I could, and so I got into Volkswagens. Not the old bugs and buses, but newer school Scirocco's and GTIs from, the 80s. So they were a lot of fun. And I had a Toyota Supra in there somewhere. And I ended up with a really, really built 81 Scirocco that was a lot of fun. And I ripped that car around for several years. And it was a cool little car. But I wasn't on 2 wheels. I still had my 400, and I went to the dunes a couple times by myself in that period, but just, few and far between. Then, you get busy with life. Bought my first house, rental property, had 3 tenants, still had my Scirocco. And I made a horrible mistake one day when I was doing an oil change on my Yamaha. I was working upside down and I tightened the steel bolt in the aluminum case instead of loosening it, which ripped all the threads right out of it. That hurt. And that put me out of commission because I had no idea what to do about it. Um, it was really rough. So there was a good period of time when I was not riding. And in this time when I wasn't riding much, I met a girl and we started a relationship. And that was great, but it obviously it takes a lot of time, and everything else gets kind of pushed to the side for a little while. But a little bit later, my dad ran into an old friend of mine, and this guy worked at the motorcycle shop. He was a pretty brilliant mechanic, and he got us into mini moto racing. Basically, just taking little kids' bikes, throwing road tires on them, and ripping them around go-kart tracks. Now, this was obviously a great time, and it really taught me a lot about road riding and racing. And I learned how to get my knee down in a corner, and so many other things. It was so much fun and so different from anything that I had ever done before. I had never been a road rider. Friends of mine had some bikes. A friend had a ZX9, and another friend had a GSXR 750, and they would let me ride their bikes. Another guy had an R6, and I would ride their bikes, and that was always fun. But I'd never had a road bike of my own. I was always a little afraid to be on the street. So riding these mini motos was so different from anything I was used to. So much grip and traction, so much fun though. And this actually gave me a chance to race with my dad. At the time, I was in my early 30s and he was in his early mid 60s. So us being on a racetrack together, especially since I never raced motocross, was something that I never thought would happen. But it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And he was fast, man. Now, we had several tracks in Michigan that we would ride at and one in Ohio. And just from very short little kidney beans to full-on racetracks that were... G&J down in Ohio was really big, and that was a really cool track. Now, my dad had a CR80. I had an RM80 and a CR60. We raced with guys with everything from TTR 110 to KX65s. Guys had some CR150Rs out there. Just a wide array of bikes. It was so much fun. One guy had a full BBR framed CRF50 that was, I mean, obviously it was a 140 or something like that, but it was a monster. So much fun. Now, I don't know if I was trying to make up for lost time or what in acquiring motorcycles left and right, but about this time my dad bought his CB 400F, the one he still has, and he wanted to do some riding with me, so my parents found a really cheap CL350 72. It's the same one I have now. It's a green one, and gave it to me as a gift. Also, my soon-to-be wife bought me a YZ, it's a '07 YZ 450F because I was trying to get into supermoto, and I ended up getting 17s for it and setting it up. It was pretty cool. About this time, the politics of the Mini Moto Association started making it a little less fun. So we got out of doing that, and I traded my mini bikes for the CB550 Cafe Racer that I have still, the orange one. At the time, it needed some work. It had some electrical gremlins and needed a clutch. So I just kind of, set that one aside too. Again, I had my first son and my second on the way at that point. And so I didn't have a whole lot of time to devote to, wrenching. I was still acquiring bikes left and right, though. An XT225 or 250 Cero, I can't remember exactly what it was, fell into my lap. It needed a little bit of work, and I got it running and plated it. And I rode it back and forth to work a couple times, but at about 50 miles an hour, it was done. So it was scary to ride home in the dark on it. I sold that bike and I ended up buying a 93 DR350. It had the coolest graphics on it ever. I thought it was so cool. So many people didn't, but I loved it. Still wanting a supermoto, but knowing I wasn't going to go racing though, I decided to offload the YZ and I picked up a WR426 and swapped all the supermoto gear onto that, plated it, and rode it for a few years. And that bike was awesome. It was one of the funnest bikes I've ever owned, but it got me into a little bit of trouble, and so I ended up selling it and selling the wheels. And at that point, we were moving, and I was going to be living a lot closer to work, and just kind of was looking at getting a scooter. I was looking at sprees, the old school 80s ones, just because I was going to be living like 3 miles from work. And then I had the idea, like, wonder if anybody's ever put knobbies on a spree. You ever seen an off-road scooter? That'd be pretty cool. And so I started looking up off-road scooter, and what pops up but the CT90. And I couldn't believe that I'd never seen one of these before. It was about the coolest thing that I've ever come across. So I sold my WR and I picked up a clean little CT90. Same one I got today. And I've already got a video up talking about all the adventures I've had on that. So you can go back and revisit that one if you like. So I rode the CT around for a while, and it was a great time. And then it seized on me, and my life was also taking a bit of a downturn at that point. I was getting divorced, lost my house, and I had to move back in with my parents, which was cool, but somehow still retained my collection of motorcycles. So at this point, I had my XR80, my CT90, CL350, YZ400, and my CB550. Also, I had my kid's CRF50. That came in along the road somewhere. So I tried to get my life back together for a while, and then, got my 550 together, got it on the road, and been having a ball with that. And had to fix the XR80, but got that done. Got the 400 back on the road after several years. And so my Husqvarna, obviously, I got from my dad. That was his bike. It no longer has spark, but has good compression, kicks over real good. I won't say easy because it's a Husqvarna, and they never kick over easy. But I got a PVL ignition for it that's going to be going in it. So we'll get that one back going again. And the VFR was my dad's too. But since his 400 needed some work and the VFR needed some work, we worked out a deal to where I got the 400 running, I could have the VFR. So that was a pretty sweet deal. And that's kind of the same deal I worked out with him for the Crestliner boat. He bought the Crosby boat and had the Crestliner, and that worked out the deal to get the Crosby running for the Crestliner. So like those deals. So I guess that's about it. That's the Honda Boy Floyd story. Where I got the name and where I got my obsession with old motorcycles. It's definitely been one of my finer addictions, as Hunter S. Thompson would have said. So I'm going to keep wrenching and learning and fixing these old bikes up and having fun. And I hope you come back and check out the next adventure we get into. So I'm your old friend B. This has been Honda Boy Floyd. Thanks for stopping by this long, wild, crazy trip. And if this was entertaining or fun, subscribe, hit the like button. Because, I need motivation to keep going. I don't know. All right. See you next time.